Billionaires don't have billions in cash. Here's where the money is. Imagine waking up tomorrow and discovering that you are worth $10 billion. Sounds incredible, right? You might imagine $10 billion sitting inside your bank account, waiting for you to spend it. But here's the shocking part. It isn't. When you hear that someone is worth 50 billion, 100 billion, or even more, that does not mean they have that amount of cash sitting in a bank. So where is all that money? And more importantly, how can someone be worth billions without actually having billions in cash? Welcome to the world of billionaire wealth. Let's start with something most people misunderstand. There is a huge difference between cash and net worth. Cash is money you can immediately spend. Net worth is the total estimated value of everything you own, minus what you owe. And this is where the billionaire game completely changes. Imagine someone owns a company worth $10 billion. They own 50% of that company. On paper, their stake could be worth $5 billion. That person could therefore have a net worth of around $5 billion from that ownership alone. But does that mean $5 billion is sitting in their bank account? Absolutely not. Their wealth is inside the asset. This is one of the biggest secrets behind enormous fortunes. Billionaires often don't become wealthy by simply earning huge salaries. They become wealthy by owning things that increase in value. Company shares, businesses, real estate, investment portfolios, intellectual property, and other valuable assets. Think about it this way. If you own a house worth $1 million, you can say you have $1 million of wealth tied to that property. But you can't walk into a supermarket and hand the cashier your house. You would have to sell it, borrow against it, or otherwise turn that asset into usable cash. The same principle applies on a much larger scale to billionaires. Now here's where things get really interesting. Suppose a billionaire owns billions of dollars worth of shares in a company. Those shares rise in value. Their net worth rises. But they don't necessarily need to sell those shares just to live. Instead, wealthy investors can sometimes use valuable assets as collateral to obtain loans. In simple terms, the asset stays invested while the person gets access to cash. And this is where the difference between the average person's financial life and the billionaire's financial life becomes obvious. The average person often thinks, I need money, so I have to sell something. The wealthy can sometimes think, I have valuable assets. How can I use those assets to access capital? That doesn't mean borrowing is free money. It isn't. Loans have interest. Assets can fall in value. And if the value of collateral drops significantly, the borrower can face serious financial consequences. But the strategy reveals something incredibly important about wealth. The wealthy don't only think about how much money they have. They think about what their money owns, and that's the part most people miss. A billionaire's wealth can continue growing while they are not actively working for a salary. If the businesses they own become more valuable, their stake can become more valuable. If their investments appreciate, their net worth can increase. If their real estate rises in value, their wealth can rise with it. And suddenly, you understand why saying, that billionaire has $100 billion can be misleading. They may be worth $100 billion, but that fortune can be spread across companies, investments, property, and other assets. It is not one giant pile of cash. And here's the biggest lesson. Cash is useful, but assets can create wealth. If you earn $1,000 and spend the entire $1,000, you still have nothing working for you tomorrow. But if you use part of that money to acquire an asset that grows in value or generates income, something changes. Your money has started doing a job. That is the fundamental difference between simply having money and building wealth. The goal isn't necessarily to have the biggest bank balance. The goal is to build and own assets that can become more valuable over time. Because the person with the biggest amount of cash today isn't automatically the wealthiest person tomorrow. The real question is, what do you own? What businesses do you own? What investments do you own? What assets are working for you? Because once you understand that billionaire wealth is built largely around ownership, you begin to see money differently. The richest people aren't simply chasing cash, they're building systems of ownership. And that may be the most important lesson of all. Don't just work for money. Learn how to make your money own something. Because cash can be spent, but productive assets can keep working long after you stop.